Welcome to Corporate Baggage, where we will help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load. We're your hosts, Whitney Siders and Catie Campbell.
For nearly 40 years, we've been coaches, consultants, and leaders inside organizations and supporting global enterprises and Fortune 500 companies to help make those organizations strong and healthy.
If there's a hot topic in the workplace, you better believe we'll be unpacking it here. Topics like return to office, performance reviews, compensation. Nothing is off limits. Like, subscribe, follow us, and drop your baggage in the comments so we can unpack it together and lighten the load.
The only thing that should be in your bag is your paycheck. Welcome back to Corporate Baggage. We are your hosts, Catie Campbell and Whitney Siders, where we help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load around your corporate baggage. And today we are diving back into one of our favorite topics, return to office. And specifically today, we want to talk about engagement and what that means in this ever-evolving world of work where we're working from home, we're working in an office, we have flexible work environments, and it all continues to change. And so for leaders, how can they make sure that they are keeping engagement high? And what does that even really mean when we are having people go from this work from home environment now into return to office?
Catie, for the record, because I know we're keeping it real on this podcast, I would actually love to never talk about the topic return to office again. However, I think the reason that we keep talking about it and it keeps coming up over and over again is because it's exposing the return to office is the exposure of challenges, barriers, problems that leaders and employees have had forever, time over time. It's just exposed that, and it's being labeled as return to office now.
It's really true. I mean, the term return to office wasn't even a thing until the pandemic really required people to kind of shelter in place and work remotely from their coworkers, and most people decided to work from home. Over time, that evolved to people working from Airbnbs or working from more vacation spots, or even just
Other
working not even in the same country. And now companies, we should say, really since like 2021, companies have started to mandate that their employees that they had initially said, here, have some flexibility, here, work from home, or we're requiring you to work from home. Now they're asking them to come back into an office space in a very traditional way, Monday through Friday, typically 9 to 5, 8 to 5, exactly, set hours. And it's really becoming problematic for those employees.
Well, and unfortunately, like we've said before, it tends to be those Fortune 500 companies that are making these moves, and other companies are saying, oh, I guess we should be doing that, or, oh, that's the way that it should be done. And that's not always the case. One, they don't necessarily have it right. And two, it's going to be different for everyone. That's going to look different based on your company, who you're serving, your employees, all of those things. I mean, companies let's just name names. Like when we're talking about large companies here.
We're talking about Amazon, Apple,
known companies,
Nike, UPS, BlackRock, all sorts of really big, well-known companies are the ones who are leading the charge. They're like TikTok trendsetters. They are corporate trendsetters for what should we do to make sure that we've got command and control over our employees. And the thing that the technique, the strategy that they're all using is, well, let's just bring them all back in house, make them return to the office so we can see what they're doing. And because these big name companies are setting those trends, a lot of other companies are following suit because they think that's the right thing to do.
Without a plan. And that's the problem.
Oh, I'm sure they have a plan, Whitney.
The plan is the policy. A plan is not a policy. And that's, I think, the distinction that's really important is because we might have a policy that says you have to be back in the office during these hours, during these days. Oh, but there's a little flexibility because it's only 3 days a week or it's only 4 days a week or whatever it is. And then it stops there. Now, I'm not saying this is all of these companies, the Amazon, maybe they have a great plan in place, but what does that entail? Does it go to the depths of actually understanding the needs of people and what they really mean by flexibility? Because just like a plan isn't a policy, return to office doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking away flexibility, which is ultimately what people want. When you're seeing and hearing people kicking and screaming, being drugged back to the office, proverbially, right?
Yep.
It's not that they're saying, I don't want to go back to the office. What they're saying is, I want to keep this flexibility that I've now learned I can have.
Well, let's roll this back a little bit. You said something earlier that is important, that the return to office or this terminology isn't necessarily new. We're just giving it a name now because I guess it's easier for people to remember. But you and I have been in the employee engagement culture game for a very long time. Back many years ago when I worked at the Partnership for Public Service, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization in Washington, D.C., we were studying what employee engagement looked like across the entire federal government. And one of the things that the partnership is known for is its research and its ability to manage really big data sets. And so we, in the organization, discovered really that leadership is the number one driver of employee engagement. So long as you've got really strong leadership, and then what follows from that is typically great policies, procedures, requirements, rules, that sort of thing, then the workforce was typically committed to the mission, committed to the values, committed to what it is that we were trying to accomplish. As I went along in my career, I started adding in similar data sets from the private sector, which is where you and I met, looking at what culture looked like in Fortune 500 companies, what it looked like from a Fortune 500 company all the way down to, a smaller startup or family-owned business, right, yeah, or nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Leadership is always the number one driver of employee engagement. Not rules, not policies, not procedures, ever. That's not what gets people out of bed to go to work every day. And so when we see that these companies, and look, Walmart is one of the largest employers in the United States. JP Morgan Chase is one of the biggest banks globally, but in particular in the United States. These are large employers of the American people. Mm-hmm. And they're making really big decisions about what they want their people to do. But what you and I know is the more important thing they should be thinking about is how do we want people to feel when they say, I work for fill in the blank company. When they say, I really respect my leadership at this particular company. The feeling piece is the piece that's really important, not the policy of where do I have to work and what time do I need to show up and clock in and clock out and that sort of thing. But I think what you and I are seeing through all of these different companies is we're seeing the policy and the procedure of what they want people to do, but nowhere in there is this emphasis on, so how is this good for the employees? How is this really good for us living into our mission and vision? Even if that mission and vision is making more money and being profitable, which, as you know, I am all for. Yeah. So I'm not just talking about this from an altruistic kind of place that you would see in nonprofits and government. In corporate America, you can have a really engaging workforce, an engaging core of leaders. You can have an engaging culture and still be very profitable. Like that's like the ultimate goal.
And what you and I have seen through some of the surveys we've done and the interviews we've done with employees is that when people do feel like they're more engaged, they're proud of where they worked, all of those things are true, you actually do get more productivity. You actually do get discretionary effort, this extra effort that does contribute to the bottom line. So you can have both. It's just how do you create those environments for people to thrive in those?
So if you think about the kinds of things that we historically have measured in companies, when they say, hey, we want to better understand our culture, we really want to understand how to better support our people, we ask questions around that. We ask questions about why people join the company, what would make them leave. We ask questions about how they felt with working with their managers or their leaderships. Like we got in under the hood a little bit on the emotional side of things. And that was important because it's an emotional decision to work someplace for a long period of time. Most people, we have choice in the United States in particular and in the West, like we can work wherever we want to. So it's an emotional decision to join, it's an emotional decision to leave, and it's an emotional decision to be committed to what you're doing, right? And that's a core component of engagement from the employee side. From the leader side, it's really understanding how does the workforce feel and right now, what these companies, the employees of these big companies that are the trendsetters, but also the fast followers of those companies, they're feeling like, okay, you're talking about return to office, but what, as you described, is I'm losing my flexibility that I was able to have over the last several years. And now you're telling me that that's a benefit that I no longer have.
I still want to keep coming back to the return to office being this mask of a policy. It's being used to disregard the systems that aren't in place, the supports that aren't in place, that were sometimes never in place, or they are in place and broken. But now leaders, at least is what I'm hearing from some of these larger corporations, is that we're saying that this is the policy and you have to return to office. You're not going to like this.
Okay.
But this is what leaders are, some leaders are saying, whether it's directly to their people or at least directly to an outside party, which is you either come back or don't let the door hit you. And so I just wonder, how long can that actually last? I think corporations, the Amazons, the BlackRocks, the JP Morgan Chase, for so long were able to fly under that because they're a top talent magnet, right? And so, but how long can that last when I feel like employees have finally been exposed to the other side of what it could be? Like, I just don't know how long that will actually last for leaders to be able to say, take it or leave it.
I don't know, Whit. I actually think they could probably stick with that for a long time. The problem these companies are going to run into is the internet lives forever. So people will know that they might have a policy one day and rip it out from underneath of you the next. So just because you think, okay, I want to go work for company X and they've got remote work, they've got flexibility, they have great parental leave, they have amazing benefits, they've got health insurance for my dog, like whatever is really important to you. And those are important things. All of them are, right? To different people. That's what a lot of employees fall in love with, that in addition to compensation, benefits, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So they fall in love with those elements, but now you know that it might be there one day and it could be gone the next. So you still might want to go work for BlackRock and Nike, and they're great companies for things that they produce, and they do add value to their ecosystems that they exist in. And at the same time, if you know that they're going to be willing to upend a policy without a lot of notice, and then basically what happens at the other end of it is, if you don't like the policy, you're gone. Or another thing that we've heard is, if you don't like the return to office and you decide to work remotely, cool, work remotely. We won't promote you. So now you've just capped off all these different people who could be your top performers, top salespeople, future leaders, really big value drivers for internal to the organization and to your customers. You're telling all these people, well, if you value your flexibility, we don't value you as a long-term growth potential in this company. There is not very many people who will forget that as they're thinking about, maybe I should join this company too.
Yeah, 100. I agree with you 100%. And I think the big thing that I'm hearing you say there, we've talked about engagement for so long. The stats haven't changed on that. 70% of employees are disengaged. We know that to be true. That stat hasn't changed in 20, 30, 40 years.
Crazy.
Right?
It hasn't. Yes.
Insane.
As hard as we've tried, Whitney.
Insane. Yeah. We're chipping away, maybe point something chipped away at it, right? And there are layers and elements of engagement and what that means to people. And I think what we have seen, though, is exactly what we're talking about here, is flexibility has risen up to the top as a primary factor of engagement. Now, all of that still goes back to how I engage with my leader and what that looks like. And does that leader go to bat for me? Does that leader have my back when it comes to those policies and when it comes to helping them be the best that they can be in supporting of them back to the systems that we talked about, right? Like, are the leaders supporting them? Are the systems supporting them? If those things aren't true, then it doesn't actually matter what the policy is.
You keep dropping the F-bomb of flexibility. You've said it a few times now. And I think it's important for us to, I feel like we need to further unpack that one, because that is almost a euphemism that exist in every organization. What does flexibility mean? I mean, what flexibility means in the military is wholesale different than what it means in corporate America, than what it might mean if you are working in a brick and mortar retail store. Okay, so when you're talking about flexibility, what are some things that you've seen, heard, or what are some of the things that your clients are talking about in terms of reduced flexibility with this whole return to office scenario?
So I'll talk about what it looks like, what I've seen it look like and what it doesn't look like. So you have, let's just talk about a couple different ends of the spectrum. So from the employee side, you have an employee that is maybe right out of college, has a few roommates living in a couple bedroom apartment in the city. He or she wants to come into the office and not sit in a bedroom all day, right? They want to engage with other people. They want to go to happy hour. They want to go down to I don't know, but they don't want to be in their home, right? So they want to get out. So flexibility might look like for them that they're going and running a couple errands mid-morning that they're not able to do past 5, or they need to cut out early because they have a social sport that they need to get to at 4:30, whatever that is, or a parent they're taking care of. I don't know, whatever that looks like for them. And then on the other hand, this is another one to unpack. Let's claim this for another day, but childcare, when it comes to parents, and I'm not just talking about moms, dads, I'm looking at you too, this is all parents, right? Any family dynamic, which I know we're going to talk about in another episode, but the way that is set up for our society doesn't help people in corporate America. The 9 to 5 doesn't work. So if I have a toddler and he's sick at daycare and I need to go pick him up at 10:30 and that's my in-office day, I don't need to be penalized. I need to be able to go pick him up. And then at the end of the day, I might add on a couple hours. But what does that require? Trust. That requires that I actually am engaged in my work. I am going to put in those extra hours to make up if I have work that I need to get done. But if I'm not engaged and I actually could care less about the company I'm working for, I'm not going to do that. So that only works. That flexible trust only works if you have highly engaged employees.
It's so true. And it reminds me, as you were telling that story, as a current military spouse and a former military spouse, there's a phrase that they used to say, like, if the Army wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one. And I used to think that only existed in the military. And you're Air Force spouse, I was an Air Force spouse. So, but in some ways, it's a tough environment to have a family and to be flexible. Okay. But now I feel like corporate America is following suit with that a little bit too. There are many companies, especially ones that are enacting these like return to office, and they're reducing the amount of flexibility that employees have. They kind of look at people as the number on a balance sheet versus a human being that has hopes, dreams, fears, expectations, and responsibilities outside of what they are contractually employed to do for that company. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you are talking about, you've got a toddler in daycare, which means he's in the germ factory. They don't care how clean the daycare is. They all are. I'm a single mom. I've got 2 girls that are in school that in the first 3 weeks of school, each of them was sick and had to get taken home during the day. If I had to be 30, 40, 50 minutes, a couple of hours away to commute into an office, they don't need to be sitting around in the school nurse for 3 hours. They need their mom to come pick them up or their dad to come pick them up. My sister-in-law has a mother that is aging and is sick, and she needs to be there and be present for her. That in a 9 to 5 job or she's an educator in a traditional teaching job, that's not going to fly. And so the systems that you were talking about earlier, I think are continuing to contract around the employee, making it very restrictive for them to just, act like a human being and have a life. And we're not just talking about all the fun social stuff. We're talking about real world stuff. People getting sick, people getting injured, all sorts of things. Aging parents, children. These are all real life conditions. Pets too. Like all of it to me is, when we're getting these policies in place, we're contracting their flexibility. And that's what a lot of employees are going to start to rise up against and are already doing it because they're voting with their feet.
Yeah. And I think it really comes to me, for me, it comes back to human first. Now, but hear me out, because that's a gray space. Because what I don't want listeners to hear here in this is this is all about the human. This is rose-colored glasses. Just let people do what they need to do. No, this is a business. You are trying to make money. You're not running a nonprofit, right? And if you are, you still need to have productive employees.
Execute on the mission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're executing and fulfilling the mission. And at the end of the day, you're bringing in funds to fulfill that. And for profit business, you're measured, especially at the Fortune 500. You have stakeholders, you have boards that you're responsible to. It's important stuff. And so there is a way to have your cake and eat it too, I believe. I think it's the work. I think you would agree too that it's the work that we do. There's a way to humanize leadership in a way that does put humans first, but actually in turn allows you to drive increased revenue. So can we talk a little bit about some of the systems that we've seen leaders do that actually do make it work? Because I think we've talked a lot about what we've seen that doesn't work, but maybe let's talk about what does work.
So, well, yeah, we can, but I actually think before we get into the systems, we need to talk about the mindset.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you could have the best systems in the world, but the leaders that don't want to execute against them, the stuff's going to fall flat.
Sure. Yeah. I'm assuming that we have great leaders. Never the case.
But that's really cute.
Yeah,
so let's remember what they say about assumption, Whitney, and go from there.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to have the right mindset that if we're going to if we're going to put restrictions around or tighter restrictions around what the work environment looks like, the remaining environment still has to look amazing. And I don't just mean the aesthetics, although a lot of office places could use a little
modern flavor.
They could totally use modern flavor. But what we really need to be looking at is what is the experience that you want your people to have? And then as a leader, what's the mindset that you need to have in order to create that experience? So, for example, if I say, I want my employees to feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, then that means I need to create the conditions for them to be able to do that. So they should be able to talk about their families or their pets or their social activities. I would do things like have offsites and have very intentionally crafted, not trust falls and cheesy kinds of things like that, but really intentionally crafted agendas and activities that promote collaboration, connection with people, and a way to get people to be close. Those are 3 C's. I like that. Mm-hmm. They're to be able to get people to be close with each other so that they are feeling that experience. It's about the intentionality behind it. So first things first, I think it's important for the leaders to say, what is the experience I want them to have? And then what's the mindset and activity that follows that so that I can create those conditions.
Right. You can't just tell people how you want them to feel and to show up that way. No. You have to create the environments that will help them feel that way. But within the confines of them creating what it is for them, right? Because what I'm hearing you say is that people need to be close. And I know you, so I know that doesn't mean this rah, you need to be best friends.
No.
And because, again, I think that the workforce is morphing in that way where it's not we all are a one big happy. I don't even want to use
the F word.
Not going to even use that. I don't like that.
She was going to say family.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that because families are dysfunctional, and that's not what workplaces are dysfunctional.
True.
And so, how can we create this environment where maybe it's not closeness, maybe it's not connection, but I at least understand what you stand for, what you're there to do. Can we collaborate? Can we have a solid working relationship where I know you have my back? And maybe that means connection for me, but it doesn't have to mean connection for the next person. Just like family means something different to me than it does the next person. And that's okay. But the point here is, can we be aligned on the same thing, which requires knowing what that same thing is first, and then understanding what it takes to get there and being clear on that together. And I think that's a system that's missing for a lot of employers.
I think if you really do intentionally choose that mindset, so we could pick a different one like commitment. So maybe as a leader, I say, I want my team to be committed to what it is that we're trying to do. Sales targets, KPIs, whatever the thing is that we're trying to produce, create, that sort of thing for our customers, our clients, or even internally. So I want commitment from folks. I want people to feel they're all in, and also that I'm all in with them. So then everything that I do, decisions that I make then need to revolve around that commitment. So in that example, yeah, maybe it's not like where it feels like squishy, like woo-woo connection and we're like collaborating and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's not that, but it's a commitment to the vision, the mission, the goals. And then maybe that means as a leader, I'm writing emails to people around those things. Maybe I'm onboarding people and we talk about the vision, the mission, the values, and the goals that we're trying to accomplish as a team. Perhaps we set up reward structures so that when we hit certain goals or milestones, people get a benefit from that. I mean, that would all be around this idea of commitment. Mm-hmm. But so when people talk about engagement, again, that's a huge like euphemism for something else. What we're really talking about is like the mindset and experience that we're trying to create as leaders, and then setting up, as you said, systems and processes to uphold that so that the employee experience is one that is intentionally driven by that initial mindset.
And it feels cohesive. It feels like I understand where we're going, what that really means, and where I directly plug into that. If all of those things are true, sometimes the environment that is created. That's why I say that culture exists whether it's what you want it to be or not. Because when all of those things are really clear for people, they can self-select in or out. And when you have committed people, when you have people that feel connected, all of those things fall into place. They're creating that culture themselves. You don't have to create policies around it.
No.
Policies are then protective and legal, right? But you're not putting policies in place that tell people how to show up.
No, you're not. And I love it when historically we've gone into organizations and we'll say, well, what is your culture like? And they'll say, well, I don't really know. Or they'll say a couple of things that are like, well, I guess we do a company picnic in the summertime and sometimes there's a holiday party and my boss likes to celebrate birthdays. It's just like really benign, boring stuff.
Pizza?
Oh, yeah, pizza parties. I mean, my fifth grader gets excited about pizza parties. But
my favorite thing is often when asked that is, it's not like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It'll never be like it was before COVID. But should it be?
God, I hope not.
Should it be?
I hope not, because when you and I started working together, 7 years ago? About a long time ago. It's like 7 years ago. The workplace was a mess then too. So it's not like this all can be blamed on where we physically were working. It goes back to what we've been fundamentally talking about, which is intentionality, planful, systematized way of how are we going to bring these smart, talented, capable humans together to do a job, a function, produce something of value for your customers or clients.
If you're listening to this as a leader and you think, I need to improve my culture, I need to bring people back into the office so we can have water cooler talk or a potluck lunch, call someone. Call us, call someone else. You need to talk to someone about what that really means to you, because you're talking about the symptoms, and I'm not a symptoms person. We need to get to the root cause of what's really going on, and it's the things we're talking about. I mean, in working with, I don't know, probably hundreds, if not thousands of companies combined between us.
Oh, yeah.
I could tell you without even talking to your company that you're going to have problems with communication. You have problems with your performance reviews. You have problems with your strategy. You have problems with rewards and recognition. And there's probably a couple other I'm missing. But those top 4 things you have problems with. Now, it's a spectrum, sure. But then we can get in and really understand what's working, what's not, and tailor it. But those are the things that, again, from family-run companies to Fortune 500, they're unique in many ways, but those things are always issues.
The other thing that we haven't talked about, but I think is a relevant point here,
oh no,
are the companies that don't do remote work or flexible work because it doesn't. The kind of company they have doesn't necessitate working in that way.
Sure, a lot of them.
A lot of them. So they never experience work from home, or if they only did it a little bit and they only do it a little bit now. There are still companies that I can picture, I will not name names just to keep everybody on the safe side of the working world, that will have conflict with a teammate or somebody else on the leadership team, and they will complain like in a coaching session about that. I'm like, how about you get up and you walk down the hall and go and have a conversation with that other person? And it's not because they had never thought of it, but I also think these conflicts and disconnects and communication challenges and everything else exist when you're sitting 2 feet from somebody else as far.
It's not going to solve it.
Or 2,000 miles away. It's not going to solve it. It's really about.
Just like it won't solve culture.
No. So the leaders are the ones who are really going to have to be intentional about the experience that they want to create and create, as you said, systems, policies, structures to be able to make it so that experience that employees have is consistent, but it's also one that is only bred from intentionality.
Here's the thing I'll drop from a recent yoga class that I think will help, which is this reminds me that you have to name it to tame it.
Okay.
You have to be able to name what's going on in order to fix it, in order to understand it. So when we're saying return to office is a problem, that's not the problem. Communication is the problem. That's not the problem. What is the problem? And then you name it, and then you can figure it out. It takes that awareness first to then be able to solve for it. And I mean, how many times have we seen that again and again where a leader will come to us and say, you know what the problem is? I'm just not getting the right talent. And then we go in and listen to their employees, do some surveys, some phone interviews, try to understand what's going on. And what's really going on is there's a completely dysfunctional leadership team with no strategy. But they're telling us the problem is they can't get talent.
And we know that's not the problem. So, at the end of the day, the smartest leaders who are facing issues around return to office, whether it's their policy or not, they really should be thinking about, how do I strategize for what I want the employee experience to be? And as you said earlier, if you're not already working with somebody as a coach or a consultant or somebody who has a depth of expertise here, you really should, because the kinds of modern problems that are being created by this back and forth ebb and flow around flexibility and, inflexibility, I guess, is really rooted in something that happened far before COVID. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of systems, practices, and solutions to making sure that your employees have a great experience, whether they have to be in the office 5 days a week or they're allowed to work from Maui when you live in Tampa.
Yeah, that's right. I want to work from Tampa.
Not this week.
No, definitely not. So lots with engagement. We're going to unpack so much more when it comes to engagement, and really all roads lead back to engagements one way or another.
That's right.
And flexibility, but the systems that you have in place will impact that. And hopefully you claimed something today from our baggage check. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you have some corporate baggage you want to unpack or something you took away from the conversation, drop it in the comments.
Find our social links in the description. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share these episodes.